This is the CreaseCast.
Welcome, folks, to episode 121 of the CreaseCast. Thankfully for you guys, thankfully for us, there's practically nothing Canucks related. I wanted to start the recording off with a little story because just to peel back the onion a bit, show how the sausage was made to keep it in food terms, preferably. I am always the latest person to the recording. Lachlan sends me the link, and usually I am caught up with work or I'm late or whatever, and I always feel really bad. And then we shoot the shit for a good 20 minutes or half an hour before we start recording. We kind of figure out what we're gonna do. The last few times that we've recorded, I've immediately jumped us into recording because I think Lachlan thinks on the fly when he doesn't know what the hell we're going to talk about. And it's just going to be kind of like off the cuff. And he's really good at being off the fly. And he's very talented of working off of my ADHD brain. And I think he's at his best when he doesn't prepare.
My ADHD brain is the same way. We're the same. You and I are the same on that regard.
So today I got home from work. I was anticipating my building was supposed to be doing fire alarm inspections. Didn't happen. So I rushed home for no reason. And so I messaged Lachlan. I'm like, all right, let's get recording. And he's like, yeah, I'll be there in a couple minutes. So I decide, okay, I'm going to go get something to eat. And so I walk over to my fridge. And as I go to refill my water, I don't know how this is possible, but I knocked over an entire tray of watermelon slices all over the floor. And you think, oh, that's just watermelon slices. How bad could it be? But these were really old watermelon slices. So they were all moldy and disgusting and sticky. And I don't know why it was in our fridge, but it was. So here I am trying to be very efficient and get recording early, start the weekend off right with some, talking about some crazy shit. And I'm going to be the one who's efficient and on time. And I end up running late because I dropped a fucking 5-pound thing of expired moldy watermelon all over my feet and my floor. So I'm now running really hot. My feet stink. And I just want to talk about the coaches the Canucks hired and then talk about the playoffs and all the NHL awards. So thank you for bearing with us today. And thank you for bearing with me, Lachlan, as I'm sure you were like, okay, he's ready to go. And now he's taking a little while. What the hell's going on here?
Honestly,
is he fooling me?
Honestly, I will say, it doesn't, for the record, it doesn't bother me ever that you're I don't ever think of you as being late. I just want to make it clear for everybody else that I'm not this guy over here. He's just never on time. I'm going to have to dock his pay again. No.
So we're clear to the audience.
We're clear.
I am mostly late every day for work. This is why I take it very seriously.
And I assume you're and I just assume that that you're gonna be a couple minutes behind just because you have a much busier, much busier life than I do. Just in general, you have your life together. This is all I got. So I understand that you're probably going to be running late because you probably have way more important things to do than.
My wife and I always send each other those memes where it's my parents at 30 and it's we're going to buy a house for our 4 children, and it's at 30 and it's what should we order from Skip the Dishes tonight for the 18th night in a row?
I will never recover from this purchase.
Yeah,
it's DoorDash or something.
It's all just like those beeps back and forth. So to hear you say I have my life together, that means a lot, because some days I look in the mirror and I'm just you're 30, dude. 31 almost. Okay, I'm 31 in 11 days.
Holy shit. Wait, wow, our birthdays are really close. Holy shit. Because my birthday is the 17th.
Oh, June babies. Hell yeah.
Yeah, hell yeah. Are we different horoscopes?
Oh, yeah, I think so. Because I think 21st is the cutoff or something.
Yeah, you're literally just
I'm just on the cusp of Cancer and Gemini.
Yeah, because I am a Gemini, so.
Yeah.
Not that I actually care about astrology all that
I believe
much.
in that. We'll leave that
No.
to the Too
That-
Hot for Hockey podcast. They got this horoscope
Yes.
thing. They got that market cornered. We don't.
Yes.
We don't know anything about it. I just know mine is a crab,
I
and the
believe
number
Elias-
69, which rules. So
I believe Elias Pettersson is an Aries. I think that's I feel like I learned that from Puck Bunnies at
Sure.
some point. I believe that's a fact I learned.
Okay.
But yeah, that's so funny that that's funny that our birthdays are that close, and that you think of yourself as like constantly being late for the show.
well, I'm like late to most things in my life, and I really like. So like the wifey, her family is notoriously late for everything. Like you gotta plan like an hour and ahead, like where you'd be like, hey, come to our lunch at noon, but it's actually happening at 1 p.m. That's what you tell
Right.
everyone else.
And then somehow they always figure that out and end up at 2 anyway, and then showing up at 2 anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So timeliness, punctuality is a big issue for me. And so I hate to think that I'm wasting anyone's time, especially someone like you who puts in a shit ton of editing work into our little show that recently cracked 100 listens on
one
a solo
episode.
episode I did. So
Yeah,
thank you to
sure.
all listeners for actually, sharing and all that stuff. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. We're not
But-
we're not a huge podcast yet. Like we're working,
No.
we do episodes all the time, and we very much try our best to present ourselves as a bigger show than we are, because
Yeah.
it's about dressing for the job you want, not the job you have, kind of thing.
What's
So
that-
yeah,
what's
we
that
really appreciate
thing?
that.
What's that thing in dating where it's like you're peacocking or whatever? You know what
Oh
I'm talking
yeah.
about? Where
A
you
little
you
bit,
put
yeah.
on airs like you're a lot like a bigger deal than you really are.
I recently
Kinda like Twitter.
I recently came into some money, which can just mean that you won $10 on like a stretcher or something. Yeah, like that.
I found a loony on like
Yeah.
the floor the other.
Yeah,
That was really exciting.
Exactly. Yeah.
Speaking of loonies, actually, I always have. I don't know if you do, like, because you're obviously like an American expat and whatever, but I always have dreams that I find like piles of loonies, like just in the streets, and it's always really exciting.
That sounds great.
And then I
That
wake
sounds like a
up
good dream.
and I'm like, oh, I didn't just find $36 in loonies. That sucks.
That's a Scott Pilgrim cutscene. I'm pretty sure. Like that's in there somewhere. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, I can't say I have those often, but that might just be because like every job I've had has been like direct in the last like so many years has been like direct deposit. So I have not carried a lot of, I just haven't carried cash much in the last like so many years, from honestly. Like
No,
it's
like,
been a while.
The only cash I think I've gotten in the last like 10 years or something is probably like when my work is like, oh, here's like the quarterly bonus or something, and it's in cash.
That's interesting.
Or like, I don't know, like someone just gives you $20 because they owe you $20, but like otherwise you don't need to carry cash anymore.
No,
everything's like iPhone Pay or Apple Pay or whatever.
Yeah,
That's
and
like
especially since COVID, now even less so. Like, it's 100% just like everything is tap or like chip or something like that. It's pretty incredible the way that technology has come, and now you have like Dogecoin.
Yeah.
I think the Sharks are getting into cryptocurrency. We don't have time to talk about that, but I believe they announced.
We should quickly touch on that because I heard about this too, where they're like, you can buy season tickets with
crypto,
like Bitcoin and crypto, and I'm like, crypto is the most like volatile currency where like you could like say you've mined or acquired like a single Bitcoin and that's worth like a season ticket run or whatever. Like I don't know what the value is, but like one Bitcoin's worth like 16 grand or 20 grand or whatever.
Right.
But what happens if you buy season tickets with one Bitcoin and then it completely like appreciates further, and suddenly instead of spending 20 grand on your season tickets, you spent like 85
in a roundabout way. Yeah, in like a roundabout way, you technically. That's kind of the problem. Is
like who would do that? Like it's so risky.
It's super risky. It's also just like kind of like, well, I mean, I guess on one hand, like technically, I mean, regular currency fluctuates all the time. It just like if you think about it that way, like maybe potentially say the amount of money you're spending in US dollars on Shark season tickets is suddenly worth a lot more in euros than it was before, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have that money. Like, so I don't know. That's kind of I do agree with you though. That's like kind of because I think the way I always look at it, and on the very few times I think about in my life, I think about cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
Is that Bitcoin is a lot more like a stock than a currency, really. Like,
yeah, you're not exactly buying it for like, oh, I'm gonna go buy a burger from McDonald's with my 0.0000001 of a Bitcoin.
right.
Unless like you're crazy or something.
It's more like almost paying for season tickets in like Apple share, in like your shares of Apple or something.
Yeah,
like
hey,
that's more what it seems like to me. Which
it would be
again is
bizarre.
not necessarily a good call, which would be a bad call. You know?
Yeah, because you'd be like, oh, hey, who's the Sharks owner again? Hasso Plattner or whatever?
yeah, owner SAP, and
I can't believe I remember that off the top of my head. But Hasso Plattner, you're like,
name that NHL owner. Can we
the
get
only
through all
one,
of them?
the only one. But
yeah.
imagine being like, hey, Hasso, here's 1 Bitcoin for the upper bowl for a season, and he's like, oh, thank you. And then like a week later, he's made like $150,000 on your season ticket purchase.
They're like paying all the coaches and stuff, and like suddenly like they found this new way to like circumvent the cap by giving like players Bitcoin. Like
they're like, hey, Evander Kane, here's a Bitcoin. Don't gamble it, and you might actually come out of this okay.
Ooh, yeah. I don't know. Well, we shall see how that goes. I don't know enough about it to.
Yeah, we don't know enough about that, but we do know enough about our first actual topic of the day, which is the Canucks actually announced some news about their coaching staff for the first, time in a long time. There was actually like real news and decision making being done since Jim Benning announced the signing of Travis Green. So they announced quite a few changes. I was actually laughing pretty hard at the graphics that they posted on Instagram, because it was like you swipe left, it was like in the top left corner, it was like hired, extended, hired, and I was fully expecting them to be like fired, and it was a picture of Newell Brown, because they had one for every coach. So I was like, this is building up to something here. But for those that don't know, the Canucks they extended Nolan Baumgartner.
Third tries to try.
Wow. Ian Clark, and then they hired Cleveland. Not Cleveland. Oh my God, my brain's turning.
Bit of a tough start
here. I'm on AHL brain apparently. The Columbus Blue Jackets former assistant coach John Tortorella's assistant Bradshaw is moving over to like an associate coach position. Yeah. And as well as David Gustafsson, I think his name was. Or Gustafsson?
Kyle Gustafsson is an assistant / special assignment coach for the Canucks.
It's very interesting. Ties to Portland Winterhawks in Travis Green's old days, which I thought was just surprising because Kyle Gustafsson looked very, very young. So I was like, when they were in Portland, which was almost 8 years ago now, maybe even later than that. Like that's
long time ago. Yeah.
Long time ago. He would have been like 17 years old. Like he looks really young. Maybe he's not, and he just looks great for his age, but like he looks really young. So I was like, oh, that's cool. Like this was like a lot of progressive and proactive moves made by an organization that isn't known for making those kinds of moves. And given everything that was speculated about like how Ian Clark was the type that he would walk if he didn't have an internal deadline met, this was a big win for them to get Ian Clark back on a 5-year deal. It was a big win to promote him to like the head of their goaltending department. So kind of taking lessons from what the league is kind of like the direction the league is going in with developing goaltending departments. Like our homeboys, the Florida Panthers, they started that 2 seasons ago now with Luongo running the ship with a cavalcade of different goaltending coaches, like all working together. Yeah. But on top of the goalie or the coaches being extended and re-signed and added to the group, they were all given the opportunity to do interviews with Sportsnet 650 over the past week. And it was so enlightening listening to Bradshaw and Travis Green and Ian Clark all do these wonderful in-depth interviews with the 650 guys and basically just laying out their philosophies and what they hope and expect from their players.
Which,
it was like,
talk about finally.
Yeah, exactly. Like I mean, the Travis Green Jim Benning press conference was very kind of like it was supposed to be inspiring confidence, but just the answers that were given by Jim were just kind of like, ugh, it's going to be more of the same. You're going to see him do a bunch of crazy shit in the offseason. There's going to be no direction. It's just like, let's just try to get back to the playoffs. Who cares about winning a cup? It's just about getting there. No confidence, inspiration whatsoever. And then you listen to Brad Shaw speak about like the importance of a penalty kill and what he needs from players on a penalty kill. And he goes on for 7 minutes about what you need to do down to stick lifts and shit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm ready to run through a brick wall for Brad Shaw, and I don't even know what he looks like. Like
Yeah.
that was those 3 interviews back to back to back, because it was each day was a different guy, was like confidence restoring type shit that the organization itself needed.
Yes. I mean, yeah, one of the biggest things the Canucks got dinged for all through this last season by us, by other people, by everybody really, is the lack of transparency and there just the lack of communication between the team, not just with what was going on behind the scenes, but what was going on, out like just on the ice and off of it, with everything, what have you.
Yeah.
And the fact that they sent out that they had these coaches, granted, I imagine this is part of, this is a media push. That's obviously, part of it.
Sure.
Part of it to try and restore some Canucks image. They did a great job at doing that. Like, that's exactly what they needed. And it's kind of nuts because of the fact that I don't remember the last time we heard from not just any of these coaches in particular, but any Canucks coach that wasn't Travis Green. Like, do you remember Manny Malhotra ever doing an interview while he was here? Do you remember, Dan Kluche doing a lot of interviews when he was running the goaltending department?
No.
What have you? Not a lot of people outside of say in the Jim Benning era, outside of the head coaches. I don't think I've heard much from anyone besides Benning, Weisbrod, and that's kind of it. And Linden when he was here. That was pretty much it. You didn't really get a lot of other assistant coaches, save for maybe the rare discussion with Doug Lidster when he was here.
Yeah, I think you got you'd occasionally get the one-off pieces. I'm pretty sure Daniel Wagner had one-on-one interviews with Manny Malhotra, if I'm remembering correctly.
And they'd have to seek them out.
It wasn't like this where it was
no.
The organization was like, okay, Brad Shaw, you're going to put 650 and you're going to advertise yourself
and go for it. Yeah. We're going to publicize that we're going to put you on a platform that will publicize the fact that you're going to be on doing a radio hit. And that's, which goes a long way. Ian Clark is a guy who personally I love his work. I'm a big fan of his work. But I couldn't pick out his voice. I would not be able to tell you what he sounded like up until
it was weird.
Did these interviews. And it was great to hear from him. He did an incredible job, and just hearing him talk about, Mikey DiPietro and how he feels that he is absolutely going to be an NHL capable goalie down the line.
Wasn't his words exactly? And Mikey DiPietro will be an NHL goalie. I guarantee it.
Basically. And he wouldn't bet against Mikey DiPietro, and that's great. That's great confidence to hear. Demko, obviously, talking about Demko and Holtby. It's great to hear him getting out there and basically giving the philosophy and talking about his philosophy that goes into goalie coaching.
Yeah.
And the system that he put together. The fact that, I said at one point during the last few months, that in almost in ways that signing Ian Clark, and I guess we'll just start getting into some of the minutia parts of this, is that signing Ian Clark might have been more important than signing Travis Green, just in the sense of there are a lot more quality head coaches out in the NHL world than there are quality NHL goalie coaches. It is a lot harder to find. Think about it. Even if you're a diehard hockey fan and you know the ins and outs of the NHL, it's pretty hard for a lot of people to name a goalie coach outside of, say, Ian Clark and maybe Mitch Korn. That's pretty much it. Like there's not a lot out, and even then that's a bit of a hard sell, I think, for some people who aren't just goalie people. Um, it's so the fact that they were able to get Ian Clark, not only that they were able to extend him, but that his contract is matching Thatcher Demko's contract, 5 years. I believe our friend of the show, David Quadrelli, was the one who broke that part of the contract. Is huge. Like that's a major hurdle cleared. That very much solidifies your coaching standard and the quality of goalie coaching you're going to get for the next half decade, which is incredible.
Yeah.
And the fact that his systems are going to trickle down not only through to like Mike DiPietro and Braden Holtby, potential backups, but also to the AHL team, to the new team in Abbotsford. He's going to be able to, whether or not he might be able to say get on the ice with that group all the time, he is going to be able to have more communication with, say, Curtis Sanford, who's probably going to still be the goalie. I imagine is going to be the goalie coach for that Abbotsford team still. Maybe he's. I think that coaching staff, Trent Cull included, is coming with them to.
Yeah, Chris Faber had a tweet where he was like, I can't confirm anything just yet, but my very close sources are confirming that Trent Cull, along with Gary Agnew and the other assistant coaches, are coming to Abbotsford to coach the team.
Yeah, because
I can't confirm it. So
right, I would imagine that makes sense, because I imagine the coaching staff, like the hockey ops things, were Canucks hires rather than, say, like Robert Esch hires. Sure. I at least that's my understanding of how that relationship worked. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Ian Clark means a lot to this franchise and the way that their goalies have developed over the last years. Like, if there's one thing the Canucks haven't had to worry about once, really, in most of the Jim Benning era, it's
the
goalies.
Entirety of it, really.
Yeah, really. I've often said the one thing that Jim Benning is weirdly batting relatively close to 1,000 on is the goaltending. Like, I can't remember the last time I saw him make a goalie choice, like a goalie decision, and been like, well, that really backfired. It doesn't happen with him on that front a lot. He's surprisingly good at decision making when it comes to the goalie coaching, to goalies and their coaching and everything else. It means a lot. I'm thrilled that he's coming. I'm thrilled that he's coming back. I'm thrilled for Thatcher Demko, who clearly made a very public plea to bring him back.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled for Mike DiPietro, who also made a very public plea to bring him back. We haven't heard much from Braden Holtby, but I imagine similar lines for him.
He doesn't care. He's in the final year of his deal. He's like, whatever.
He cares. He definitely cares. And yeah, this is huge. This is huge from all sides. This is a slam. Ian Clark, I don't know as much about the other coaches as I do with Clarkie, but yeah, slam dunk for the Canucks on that front.
Yeah. You know what's funny is like the whole Benning is really good at identifying goalies thing is that he used to be an NHL defender, and you look at the track record of like his organization and his regime specifically in their ability to identify like free agent defensemen and defensemen in the draft, and it's just like the worst thing imaginable. Like the best defenseman they picked up is like Troy Stetcher, and then they walked away from him and then basically criticized that he wasn't playing like big enough for them. Their inability to draft or like to find credible defensemen that don't fall in their lap, because you cannot say like Quinn Hughes was like some super scouted pick. Like, he fell in their laps. It was a layup. You would have had to go on your way to
this is the obvious best player available.
There's the I'm using air quotes here for those that don't follow our YouTube channel, but I'm using air quotes to describe the Hughes family as family friends of John Weisbrod. So like that one was a huge layup. So outside of Quinn Hughes and Troy Stetcher, like, what are we talking about? We're talking about Eric Goodbranson, Matt Bartkowski, Michael Del Zotto, like just a laundry list of bad defensemen. Derek Pouliot, like guys that they traded a lot to acquire, or guys that they spent a lot to acquire in free agency. And you're like, you used to do the job. You used to be an NHL defenseman. How can you not identify this, but do so well at identifying goalies? It's so bizarre. I mean, it's good. We'll get into this when we talk about the playoff series, but like identifying goaltenders that can be your number one is like the hardest thing to do. And finding a pipeline of goalies is incredibly difficult to do. That's why the Ian Clark signing is so exciting, because they're locked into 5 years with Ian Clark right now, where he's going to be, telling them who to pick up in the drafts, what he likes, what he's looking for.
Yeah, you get to pick his brain on everything beyond just who starts what game. Like, there's so many other things that translates over to.
And it will extend for years. Like, look at Columbus. They're still reaping the rewards from his drafting advice in Columbus.
Yeah.
Like,
Korpisalo, Merzlikins.
Yeah, they're still reaping the rewards. So the Canucks have basically committed to getting at least a solid pipeline of goaltending prospects in the works for the next 7 to 8 years through this extension.
Silovs, yeah.
Granted, obviously, like, we don't know. You never know what can happen in the next 5 years. Like,
Demko might still be the starter by that point. You never know.
Yeah, like you have no idea. But it's a good pickup, and it sets the organization up in a good way in an offseason where they need to do so much. They need to sign Patterson and Hughes. They need to prepare their expansion draft. They need to create their expansion.
Jeff Patterson had the whole list of things they have to do. The Abbotsford AHL affiliate thing is like at the back of the list, which is nuts because there's, like, putting the coaching aside, there's a lot that goes into starting an entire AHL team from scratch again.
Yeah.
Like, outside of what goes on on the ice, they're not getting anyone else from Utica outside of whoever was coaching. So, which means you need, new people to manage your marketing, new people to do social media, new people to run the arena, everything.
Equipment
managers,
video coaches.
There's a lot more than just there's a lot more that goes on off the ice that they're going to have to find people who are capable of doing that job and hire to do. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they've really only got 3 months to get that all done now.
It's kind of less than that, because it's like you look at his list and a lot of those things are kind of tied together, right? Because you can't plan your AHL affiliate, like you can't round out the depth or figure out like which players are going to be, because you don't know how much cap you're going to have left over after signing Pedersen and Hughes to round out your NHL roster. And you can't round out your NHL roster until you know what's happening in your expansion draft or at the draft, because, everything's in flux. They might trade like a Nate Schmidt in a second for Cernak or whatever. You have no idea, right? So all of these things are completely interchangeable or like intertwined. And these are major components to their franchise. Like, building an AHL franchise isn't just like, oh, we have, 6 draft picks that are probably going to ride out the last year of their ELC, and that's it. Like you said,
it used to be kind of like that, but
it used to be like that. They used to. I mean, look at last year. They were.
I mean, it's not that long ago that the AHL was that when you went to the AHL, if you were any sort of draft pick, it was like, oh well, his career's over, the end. Like that was a thing people forget that was a thing for a long time. That if you got sent to the minors, people were like, well, his career's just doomed. Like you'll never amount to it. You never saw first round picks there ever.
I won't say which player or which NHL player this is, because I don't want to sour any relationships or anything. But good friends of mine grew up with a local player here, and he said, this is obviously secondhand through my friends. They said, the year that this player got sent down to the minors, he thought it was going to be a death sentence to his career. And he didn't like the AHL coach, so he did everything in his power to get back to the NHL, because he thought, like, if he stuck around longer, he would not get out, basically.
But that's sometimes the mentality. That's kind of the mentality it used to be, right? It's like if you were there, like, you had to bust your ass to get out. It was a get out kind of thing. It wasn't like it is now, where teams are realizing, like, oh, you can marinate. This is a marinate league now. Like, that's the direction the league is going in, where you can... For the better, yeah.
yeah, like the teams are looking at like the Marlies, they're looking at the Crunch, and they're seeing Ross Colton spends a year and a half in Syracuse, and now he's on their fourth line providing goals in the NHL playoffs, and will probably be a piece that they use to move out bad cash to a team like Vancouver so that they can make space for another player that comes up the pipeline next year. That's how
Teams
they
are
operate, and it's so smart to operate
Yeah.
that way.
Teams are specifically signing players sometimes just to be leaders for their AHL teams and just to, help mentor the younger guys who are in the development league. That's how far
Yeah.
we've come. Like that
Yeah.
it's that level of extra thinking that goes into it sometimes.
Yeah.
One thing before we get into like some of the other coaches or if there was any other things you wanted to talk about them, we were talking like just to like kind of wrap up the whole Benning being very good at like noticing goaltenders. Like, yeah, his track record, like, and that goes, what's weird is that goes like beyond just his time in the Canucks. Like, he was I believe he was the guy who had a big hand in like drafting Ryan Miller. In fact, I think Ryan Miller thanked Jim Benning specifically when he retired. When he retired, he thanked Jim Benning for being the guy who took the chance on him in Buffalo. Back then, I believe he was with the Bruins when they traded Raycroft for Tuukka Rask, which was huge. Taking the chance on Tim Thomas, I think, was a lot to do with him. And I know we're having the whole 2011 thing going on right now. But, I mean, they were very clear. I mean, as much as I like to, I don't love Tim Thomas, they were clearly got good goaltending out of him when they needed it.
Regardless of the legality of
regardless of pad sizes or what have you. In Vancouver there have been some decisions that I think a lot of people have said in the time since that they were bad decisions, like signing Anders Nilsson or giving Ryan Miller that big contract. Whereas I maintain that both of those were very good decisions that actually helped. Weren't necessarily meant to say win a lot of games. They were meant to give time for Jacob Markstrom and to give time for Thatcher Demko. That was actually what those decisions were. They weren't about that. They weren't about, say, winning a lot of games necessarily. And that's the part that I think sometimes gets lost in those contracts. He did very well at just buying guys like Markstrom time and Demko as well with other guys and being able to fill the void and not hitting the panic button when those guys didn't necessarily like immediately start paying off dividends. They didn't immediately panic and go, okay, Nilsson's the starter now, go. Like they were like, nope, we're gonna stay the course and then we're gonna trade Nilsson halfway through his second year. That was the plan. That was the plan. That was the one time they've had a plan is with the goaltending.
and like at the time too, like the Nilsson signing was like completely fine because they really didn't know if Markstrom was going to ever be the guy. When they signed Nilsson, it was kind of like, okay, Markstrom can be kind of good, but he's iffy. Let's get Nilsson in, who's, got experience, same kind of deal. They're iffy, see what he can do. They didn't realize the second year of Nilsson's deal that Markstrom would assert himself as a clear number one, and Demko at the exact same time would have basically proved he had nothing else to gain from the AHL and was like, you need to bring me up to the NHL now because I'm learning nothing. And they listened to him and made it happen through a trade. So the Nilsson deal was fine, but that is probably enough on goalies because I'm sure Chris Faber's listening to this right now and he's just shaking his head, driving wherever he needs to go, to the watermelon store or the mustard shop. I don't know. But why don't we get into some of these playoff series that have recently finished? I just wanted to say to any fans of the Colorado Avalanche, I am so sorry for the jinx that I cursed them with.
It was all him.
It was literally all me. I don't know what I was thinking, saying out loud that they could go 16-0 before facing a real challenge. My bad.
They immediately went 0-4.
They went 0-4 right after I said that quote.
It's like that.
Sorry.
It's like that meme from Thor Ragnarok where like Hela is like, there's nothing you can do to stop me, and that's like the Avalanche. It's the Avalanche. Like, there's nothing you could do to stop me. The Knights are like, no, but he can, and then it's just you exploding out of a mountain. Yeah. The Avs are a juggernaut. They're not gonna lose a game. Kind of.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm so sorry.
I am. First of all, rest in peace to my incredible potential uniform matchup of the Habs versus the Avs in those Nordiques jerseys. They wouldn't have done it anyway. I know that. I know they wouldn't have done that because the NHL doesn't like you making uniform changes.
They don't like fun or drama.
I believe they actually have a mandate during the playoffs that you have to, ahead of time, you have to pick what your home jersey and what your road jersey is for the playoffs. Like that's an actual.
So stupid.
It's very stupid, especially like the NBA. They can change, I believe, up to like 48 hours before the next game. Like I think that's a thing.
They're gonna say they could change 48 times into 48 different jerseys. Like I think you literally can give them up to like I think it's just 2 days notice that you're changing the uniform and you're gonna use. Again, that has a lot to do with there's a lot less uniform equipment to carry when it comes to that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. But come on, I'm very sad we're not gonna get that. But in regards to the Knights, wow, did they come out of like left field to play some of the best hockey that they've played? I think in their entire existence. Like that was, and that's saying something because they played some great hockey in those in the last few years. Like that's it. Even like Game 3 of that series, it didn't look necessarily like they were going to dominate and they were going to go on this run. It still looked a lot like, wow, they barely squeaked that out against Colorado. They just barely got a win here. They're going to need a lot more. And sure enough, they got a lot more. Marc-Andre Fleury was incredible the entire time. But the biggest factor for the Knights was the fact that they were really able to just completely neutralize Nathan MacKinnon in those last few games. They really just, and you can see you saw him throwing the punches like at the end of the second in Game 6. Like guys on the ground, he's punching him while he's already down, and already not good. I made it as soon as I saw that. I was like, oh, he's done. Like he's frustrated. I don't think you're getting much out of him. Yeah, he's clearly mad. And I didn't think I at that point I was very much like, I think the Avs are done here. I don't think they're coming back from this one. Just because they look so overly frustrated. The Knights had done an incredible job at shutting them down in their own end of the ice. They looked a lot faster on pucks in the transition and everything than the Avalanche did. Like there was nothing they could do. Like there was nothing that Avalanche defense just kind of, I don't want to say it crumbled because it wasn't particularly like a collapse or anything. I mean, Ryan Graves had a few bad shifts here and there, as did Patrick Nemeth. But I mean, the Knights just took over. Like that's what depth gives you. That loss of Nazem Kadri to that suspension kind of really hurt him a lot. For a team that's again has a lot of depth in its own right in Colorado. Yeah. Like at the end of the day, it was very much the case of the Knights just really, really buckled down and got to what made them successful, and it won the day. They looked really good. Like they might go 16-0 before facing a real challenge.
That'd be, and Knights immediately lose. Yeah, get swept by Montreal.
I mean, we can get we'll get into that.
We'll get into that later. Yeah.
Yeah, but I have a feeling that the Knights are going to get goalied by Carey Price. I don't know why.
Really,
they looked really competent in those 4 games against Colorado, but Colorado was like keeping it really close. Only when Vegas got a 2-goal lead in that final game where it was just like, oh, it's over. But otherwise, Colorado was giving it to them like the entire time. So I mean, obviously Vegas is a bigger team, so they're gonna like make Nick Suzuki and Brendan Gallagher and Cole Caulfield's lives like a living hell. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I just have this feeling that Carey Price is just gonna put it on, and I'm excited for it.
So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that does happen. I don't think for the Canadian, as much as I want the Habs to win, I don't think they have they just don't have the depth to match. Like, they just don't have there are the third and fourth lines of the Knights just are clearly, like, much better than what the Habs have at their disposal. Defense, especially, I think is an especially clear victory in terms of Vegas, what they have on their blue line compared to what the Canadians have, which is
especially because the Canadians don't have Jeff Petrie. Like, oof, that's tough.
Yeah, they're in a lot. The Habs are in especially a lot of trouble there, which is why Carey Price is going to need to stand on his head a little bit more. Yeah. But I mean, for Vegas, it's like, I mean, here just insight into my last like day or so. I made I made a tweet yesterday where I was just like, okay, so there are 4 teams left here. There's the team that circumvented the cap left. There's the super annoying four team that's been around for 4 years. And when I say annoying, I mean more in the fact that they won't stop winning, and it bugs me a lot. That and their social media, their Twitter account is, it's annoying. It's cringy.
You know what it reminds me of is the LA Kings when they were in their heyday, like their social media account, which was just like unbearably cringe and like try-hardy.
Yeah,
that's what it reminds me
annoying.
of.
I didn't follow that account for years because I found it so annoying. Yeah. And then the most boring hockey team in the world, which is the one that really got New York.
They didn't like that.
I got lots of Isles fans in my mentions being like, hey, they're not boring. It's like, yeah, they are. They're a Barry Trotz coach team that just takes every game and brings it to a screeching halt entertainment-wise. Like, and I can go in depth on that later when we talk about the Islanders. But
do we have to?
Yes, we do. We have to talk about the Islanders. But like, from the Knights standpoint, they just keep finding ways to win, and I don't know if there's a lot that the Montreal Canadiens can do about that. Like, I think the fact that they're here, they're playing, it's a lot like the similar situation the Canucks were in against Vegas last year, where they, it's house money. You've already gotten way farther than you were expecting.
You overachieved pretty hard.
Yes,
because your division sucked, but
yes, but still, everything else you do at this point is just, it's extra. It's bonus. Yeah. You've done a hell of a lot already. There's nothing to be ashamed about in that situation. You should be very proud of the season you've had. It's just going to be very hard for them to cook Vegas. I had some people, some Vegas people were a little annoyed, but at me tweeting
I love the New York replies where they're like, they're not boring, and it was like, okay,
giving me full explanations, of which it's like, buddy, I had muted this thread a while ago. I'm not even listening that much. Like, go off if you want. It was actually,
we both had the same reaction, because when you messaged me this morning, you're like, this had 30 likes when I went to sleep. I was in the same boat, like, because I saw your tweet and I was like, this is really funny. And I wake up, I'm like, 1,300 likes. What the hell?
I believe it's at 3,000 right now. I believe it's my most liked. It's got to be my most liked tweet ever. I don't think I've had one. I don't think I've had one like it before.
It was so funny just reading all the because a lot of people take tweets very personally, as if like if I had a previous tweet about the Canucks, that automatically makes me like a Canucks fan. Therefore, anything about any other team is like a slight and a criticism, and me being like a jealous fan or something, when it's like, I can literally just joke about any team, including the Canucks, without it meaning anything. It's just me finding something funny. And so your tweet was something very funny, and Isles fans that were in your mentions being like, the most goals. And it's like, okay, your team played Tristan Jarry and plays
in the first series,
and your team plays defend the 1-goal lead and then score empty netters while teams try to even it up. That's the game plan. And sure, if you love defensive hockey, like if you loved the St. Louis Blues winning against Bruins, playing that exact same way, then power to you.
By all
to
means.
Lachlan Irvin in his very funny tweet. It is very funny calling the Islanders boring, and it makes it even funnier when there's
it just makes
40
me want to do it
meatheads from
more.
New York, complaining and crying like, don't call my team boring. They're so fun.
And also, again, the whole point of that tweet, as much as besides being just a joke, is that it's more meant to be for, everybody else. The team, the 27 other fans of 27 other franchises that don't have a team left. That's who that tweet is for more. It's for all the people who have to pick a team to jump on the bandwagon with. Not for you guys. Obviously, you're going to pick your own team and like everything they do because it brings you wins. But I will say, the Knights are an example of a team that plays a very defensive style of hockey, but is also entertaining. Yeah. Like, they're also an extremely entertaining hockey team.
People were saying, with speed,
I think the most liked reply was somebody saying, I don't like how people use boring to describe any team with good defense. No, I'm not using it to describe any team with good defense. The Avalanche and the Knights are both teams who play very good defensive hockey and are fun. The Islanders play a very good defensive style of hockey that is also extremely boring for the offset. And we'll get to that again. We're getting ahead of ourselves because we will talk about the Islanders in a second, give them their due as a conference finalist. But I guess from a caller, I wanted to ask you from an Avalanche standpoint, like, where do you go? Like, what do you go from here? Obviously, you can't panic. Obviously, there's no reason to hit the panic button here in terms of, their window's already closing, they can't get it done. They're the President's Trophy winning team. Like, what do they need to do to kind of flip this decision next year?
Sakic has never shown to be a guy who's going to jump the gun or, make an aggressive move for no reason.
There's that one historically bad year where they didn't do much. They didn't change much from that year.
Like he's a patient fella, that Mr. Sakic. And I have a feeling he's probably going to get a really good extension on Landeskog. Like, I think Landeskog's going to recognize that what they have building in Colorado is something that can probably lead to them winning a cup, possibly maybe two. I don't want to get ahead of myself because I've already jinxed them enough. But I think with the core that they have, if Landeskog is like, you know what, if I sign a 3-year or 4-year deal at $3 million, that opens up our team to improve even more. And we've already got a huge pipeline of players coming in. Like, we have Newhook coming in. There's so many directions they can go if, like, Landeskog stays on a good deal. And to the people that are like, if Landeskog goes and like all these other UFAs walk, it's like, well, it doesn't matter. They've acquired a really good pipeline of prospects that you're not really hurting. Like we said countless times on this show, Bowen Byram didn't even play, and he's arguably better than Ryan Graves and probably whoever else they have on their third pair. So they're not really worrying at all. On the other hand,
Shane Bowers.
On the other hand, you have like the Boston Bruins, who lost to their series against the Isles. They have a ton of their core expiring on their current deals. And judging by the way the team kind of fell apart against the Isles, I'm sure a lot of those guys at their ages are like, okay, do I want to hang around and try to wheel spin for another chance, or do I want to move on for a better shot? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, Colorado's like on the up and up curve, whereas Bruins are they're finally in that Canucks in 2013 stage where they really need to take a hard look at what they're going to do next.
They're very much at a franchise crossroads of where they need to go. Colorado is in a situation where if they're playing their cards correctly, they're very much they're in the early stages of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Like, they're in that where, the Lightning, it took them some time as well, right? Like, I mean, to get this good, they were a team that I believe, they made the Cup final in 2015. But even then they were still kind of that was very much the building blocks even year where they kind of made a final, like, almost ahead of schedule, really. Like that after that, I think was when they signed Kucherov to his incredibly team-friendly deal, Stamkos as well. They brought in guys like Braden Point, Anthony Cirelli. They let go of people like Jonathan Drouin.
They sold high.
They sold high on Drouin and got Mikhail Sergachev. They did a really good job at, they never panicked, and when it came down to started to kind of make those big decisions, they were able to convince those players, the important people, to stick around because it was only going to get better if they gave them time. And I think the Avalanche are very much in the case where they could become the kind of Tampa West. It does depend on how well you negotiate, say things like, Gabe Landeskog. A big one for them is Philip Grubauer is also due for a huge pay raise. You have to get rid of, there is some cap you have to get rid of probably. Eric Johnson is making $6 million. He is on LTIR, but he won't be next year. That's kind of a contract that maybe you need to sort out sooner rather than later. Just because of how expensive
but the bottom line,
they missed him is also the thing, is they definitely missed him in that second series. They really could have used Eric Johnson back there, as much as it hurt them. Yeah. As much as that contract is a bit pricey. Yeah. Because right now you have Nathan McKinnon making. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say the bottom line is like Sakic is like, if you were like a fan or whatever and you're wondering like what the Avs are gonna do, like Sakic is the type that I would trust his plan at this point because like obviously a lot of people in 2016-17 when the team was like complete dog shit were like, what the fuck is Sakic doing? He doesn't know how to build a team. Now they're like staring down the barrel at this team that like they could go 16-0 before they even face a challenge. If you're like a fan, like I would have a little faith in the guy. Look at what he's drafted and like the cap maneuvering that he's done to build like a credible contender out of, getting Nazem Kadri for Alex Kerfoot, like stuff like that. Even though Nazem Kadri was once again a non-factor in a NHL playoffs in the first and second rounds, he sought him out to be useful in the regular season. He's still got Nathan McKinnon, as you were saying, on that incredibly team-friendly deal for at least, I think,
3 more years.
3 more years.
2 more. Two more. Sorry, I'm looking at the current year.
That's their window, though. They've got 2 more years to maybe take a crack. So if he can convince Gabe Landeskog, like, hey, sign a 2-year extension. If you can make it team-friendly at $6 million, I can surround this team or this group with a better decor that really makes a run for it. And I would have faith, frankly.
It's especially in their favor this year, particularly because the cap is flat. There's not going to be a lot of teams that are necessarily able to say offer like back up the Brinks truck for Gabriel Landeskog. Like people would, when push came to shove, some teams would, but it's not as easy. It's not as easy to make that call. So it's a little. The odds for teams, like incumbent teams, being able to re-sign guys is a lot more in their favor this time around, just because of the layout of the league right now.
Right.
If I'm Colorado, stay the course. Try to, if you're literally the one thing that you need to do is be able to convince important pieces to come back on team-friendly contracts. The one thing that you need to go shopping for, I would say, is a decent 1B for Grubauer. Not because I think he definitely had Game 6 was not a banner night for him, for sure. Like, he definitely struggled in the later stages. But some of that could potentially just be alleviated by, say, having a goalie capable of taking a few more games away from him. I'm not sure if Pavel Francouz is that guy. I don't know enough about him to say if he is. He might be. I might be overlooking him entirely here on that regard, but maybe you kind of need like an Anton Khudobin for Grubauer. Like you need somebody to kind of you need you need insurance. You just need the insurance, and who can take another, say, 30 games during the regular season, maybe like closer to 35 even.
Yeah, you need a real proven like 1B, and like honestly, like I would probably
Devin Dubnyk could be. Devin Dubnyk could be.
I would honestly be I mean, I haven't watched enough of the Avs say this, but like, I would be like, Grubauer would be the perfect candidate to be a 1B on a contender. And if they
He's a
got
Vezina
themselves a
candidate,
1A.
my friend. Yeah. We'll talk about that. We'll talk
But
about
anyways,
that.
we'll get into that in a little bit.
We'll
We want to quickly run through some of these series because we don't
Yeah.
want this episode to run too long. But we're gonna get into your boys because we missed this in our last episode because
Yes. We had so much to
I'm an
cover in the
idiot.
last episode.
We had a lot to cover in the last episode.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we don't want to go too long on too much. So we're gonna quickly go into the Bolts and the Canes. The worst team on the planet lost to the best team on the planet. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. One of the things that you and I talked about I remember in the pre-show for the last episode was like a lot of my, the way that the Lightning, one of the big things about watching the Lightning in these playoffs has actually really changed my thought process on how I see and how I look at the Lightning. And their style of play. There have been a lot of games, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, but there have been a lot of games this year in these playoffs where the Lightning have not been the better team on the ice. They have been the second best team on the ice in a lot of playoff games, including specifically a lot of games that they've won. Would you agree on that? Would you agree on that? I would say.
It's tough to say because I don't think there is like they have like Eric Chernak on their team, who like I'm really high on. I think he's really, really underrated. I thought it was a huge miss on a lot of the teams in the league to not have offer sheeted him to a big deal because he's worth it for the value that he does bring.
Right.
I think the issue is that the way they play, it's incredibly opportunistic. It reminds me of watching AHL hockey where they have no problem, facing down the pressure in the defensive zone. But as soon as they get like a breakout pass that works, they are the most deadly team in the league. They are so good at their cross-team passes and setting up one-timers. Like ad nauseum, those would happen against the Florida Panthers because they were relying on, a sieve in Bobrovsky and then like a sponge in Chris Drieger and then, a child out of the womb in Spencer Knight in net that they could, make mincemeat out of them. The Canes, obviously, they have a lot to like in their teams, and I've made fun of them so much on this podcast, mostly to your irritation. Like I don't think they're that bad in general. Like I think
they're in a very good position.
They're set up well. I just don't think their goaltending is ever gonna make it a difference against a team. Like when you're in a division that has a team like Tampa that can make mincemeat out of your goaltenders, you need an elite goaltender, an elite starter to make the difference. Like if I was the Canes right now, I would be all in on trying to get Tuukka Rask from Boston.
Oh wow!
Like you would Nedeljkovic is fine, but if I'm
because I mean Nedeljkovic is young. I wouldn't count. I feel like you're counting out Nedeljkovic too quickly here, just based on like the fact that he's only 25. Like there's
that's the thing.
There's a lot more opportunity for him to there's a very good chance he only gets better from here. Like this was his first season as a starter, as an regular NHLer, and he did incredibly well.
Sure, but if they want to win with their current core as it stands, like with Aho on,
that is
like the guys that they have right now, like Nakash still on his ELC, like you want to have. It's the same thing that I think about the Avs. Like in a perfect world, Grubauer is your 1B to a dominant 1A in the regular season and a proven playoff starter. If the Canes are in a world where Tuukka Rask their 1A and Nick Delkovic is their 1B, you're golden. You want to have that guy who knows how to win in the playoffs. You want a guy who's proven in the regular season and a 1B like Nedeljkovic, who's a proven guy in the regular season, but is still just kind of growing in playoffs. Like the Canucks, they had Jacob Markstrom, who finally started to prove that he could be that 1A in both the playoffs and the regular season. And then Demko proved he could be that backup, that reliable backup in the regular season, and showed the glimpse that, oh man, this guy could be a serious playoff performer if he gets there. I don't think I'm ever relying on Nedeljkovic to be my 1A on a future cup run. I think he's completely fine as a 1B.
I mean, he had some pretty Demko-esque performances here and there during these playoffs. I mean, he had a couple games where he was shaky, granted.
Yeah,
but
I think
that might also
you
just
want-
been the fact that like he had a monstrous workload up to that point that he never had to deal with. But I do see what you're saying about, say, potentially like them just kind like the timing just kind of barely being a little off just on when Nedeljkovic hits his prime and when the Canes potentially are at their best possible chance at winning a Stanley Cup. I do see that. I do understand that. And I do agree with you like on Mrazek potentially. He's not really that guy. Like that's not really him.
Yeah.
I just wonder if you can really afford to, say, go out and spend a lot of money on a 1B, like a Tuukka, especially with Tuukka Rask. And ignoring what Boston Bruins fans tell you, he is a capable goaltender in the playoffs. He is more than capable of being that guy for you.
He had a torn labrum in the Isles series, which is why he was so bad in games 5 and 6. And I'm like...
And even then, he wasn't that bad. Like, he wasn't that terrible. They got a lot of playoff. They got a lot of power plays.
Like Matt Grzelcyk had a bunch of bad giveaways that basically threw the game away. So it's like, like Tuukka Rask, like maybe like one of those could get called back. But at the end of the day, like he wasn't being done any favors by his defense. That's not even like the Bruins' fault because it's like they lost Krug and Chara. And they had nothing to replace it besides young prospects. Like, of course.
And Charlie McAvoy, they're in a bit of a... Their defense was very much in a transition year. It was very much a transition for them.
Their big acquisition was Mike Riley. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Taylor Hall.
No, but I mean on the defense. Like, their big defense piece that they picked up, who was, like, immediately slotted into, like, their top 4, was Mike Riley, who had, like, this resurgence in Ottawa out of nowhere.
Yeah, Mike Riley is a guy that if you're, say... already built and he's playing on your third pairing, that's a good cup contender. Whereas the Bruins are very much at kind of I would say the end of their window.
This was probably the end of the window. And just to kind of wrap things up on the Lightning before we get into Boston and the Canes as well.
The Canes very much it's very much another case of, Carolina's getting better. They're very much improving. They're still a very young team. They need give them time. They're another give them time kind of team. The Lightning are a team that I've said
could
before.
Go 16-0.
Another case of where I'm not trying to harp on a team. I'm really not like dumping on a team for how they win. It's very much they're successful. I'm not judging. But they're a team that, plays a lot chippier. There was that Kucherov slew foot on I want to say it was like Svechnikov. I don't remember exactly who it was. But it was a very blatant, dirty, play that I believe didn't even result in a penalty. But what the Lightning do is they're very much a team that, again, they play a dirtier, chippier style of hockey. They know that the refs are going to play game management, are going to even up calls on a regular basis. And to their credit, they drag other teams into the mud with them a little bit. Carolina's not a team that can really handle that. Like that big Svechnikov penalty that resulted in like that massive goal in game 4 of that series that really turned the tide in that series. On that same play, Svechnikov took a completely bad penalty. Like that was a terrible penalty to take, especially at that point. Like that was a clear frustration penalty. But then as you watch the highlight, you see Sergachev literally cross-check, I think it's Sebastian Aho, right in the back. Like, drill him in the numbers. That doesn't get called in front of the ref. Like, the ref sees the Svechnikov penalty around Sergachev. The Sergachev one. And that's how the Lightning win a lot of games, is that they're incredibly good at being like, okay, we are going to make you take a bunch of penalties, as many penalties as we do, and then we are going to crush you on our power play, because it is so incredibly lethal. Like you mentioned, the one-timers. And that's the Hurricanes, I guess, unfortunately, they just might have to get into the mud a little bit there. I kind of hope not. I like the style of play. They play a little better. But the Lightning are the team that has all of that wrapped up in a bow. They know what they're doing. They know how to win at this point. And as you kind of flip it over to Boston and the Islanders here, the Islanders are very much a team that kind of has that similar standpoint. Like there was we talked about the New York Saints thing, to which, again, for all the Islanders dumping on me and my mentions, hey, you guys are doing great. Like, I'm not saying you guys aren't entertaining. The Nassau Coliseum crowd is incredibly fun. They're the absolute. It's a very much a yin yang situation.
They're the
where,
reason why they appear to be fun. That's it.
Yes, exactly. Like they
the
appear to be a lot.
fun.
The team seems more fun in games, particularly in home games, because of how great the crowd is. Like the crowd is very fun, and I will give Islanders fans their due on that.
Yeah.
But no, but on hockey standpoint, no, they very much are. We are going to suck the life out of this game until the clock runs out, until the sun burns out, basically. Like and Boston is, I've said before, is a team that doesn't mind playing that style, but they're a little bit on the older side. Their core is definitely aging out a little bit.
Yeah.
The window's closing, aside from Pasternak. I mean, all I can think back to in this series, though, is that wide open net that Pasternak dings it right off the off the post. Like
if he scores, this is a completely different series.
Yes, that's that was the turning point of that series. 100%.
The TSN turning point, I believe they call it.
Yes, straight up, that was a turning point. Like that series, I think goes. I don't know if it necessarily Boston wins, but I will say I think it's a lot closer of a series if that goal goes in. I think they win that game 4. The Islanders, they're going to be a tough out, obviously. They're a tougher out than I think anyone gives them credit, than maybe even we've given them credit for. They are a very chippy team, and it's going to be it's going to be interesting, again, compared to like what we saw from them last year, where they're playing the Lightning, and the Lightning just hammered them in most of those games. I think it might be a little closer this time around. I don't know what you think, especially because Matt Barzal's really figured himself out.
Okay, so before I get into that, one of the things I saw in the replies to your tweet about the that pissed off all the Isles fans, I saw a bunch of Isles fans talking with each other, and they're like, they're just mad that we don't have a star. And I'm like, you guys do have a star.
Matt Barzal. Some people were saying that, and people were like, I don't know, you can call a team with Matt Barzal boring. It's like, you totally can. I said the team's boring. Can. I didn't say he's boring.
Yeah, but it was so funny. Like, it was just so funny seeing like their own fans be like, we don't have a star. It's like, no, you do, but
you totally
coach doesn't really want him to do the flash that would make him like a star in any other market. He wants him to be like, I think Trotz had a quote today where he's like, you don't win off individual players, you win cups off of the team or something. It's like,
and that's totally true. That is totally true. Like,
it's
not like in say like basketball where say like LeBron James can take a cast of nobodies to NBA finals and stuff, right? Yeah. Like in hockey, I mean, Connor McDavid and Austin Matthews living proof of one guy can't make a team.
Yeah,
like,
the strong link can only go so far, basically.
Even two stars can't make a team. I mean, otherwise Crosby and Malkin would have won like loads more cups than they did if that was possible, right? Like in their heyday.
Yeah. The Bruins moving forward though, like they have their Matt Barzal, they have David Pastrnak, so like they're gonna have to basically decide.
I mean, they could have had Barzal too. Is the hilarious part. They could have had both. That's the real dagger of this series, is it not? That they could have had Matt Barzal.
The fact that they did get to, like, the fact that they're always in the playoffs in spite of the fact that they blew 3 back-to-back first-round picks, like, that's impressive in its own right, that they managed to still be a contender in spite of screwing up, like, this golden opportunity to set up, like, a dynasty. But you have McAvoy, you have Pasternak, like, they've got good building blocks, and they've got the pieces to transition well. It's just like do they realize where they're at and sell off and go for the rebuild, or do they do the Aquilini approach and say, so long as we have Marchand
kind of thing, right?
So long as we have Marchand on our team and Patrice Bergeron, we are constantly going for playoffs, and it will be a turn it around in a hurry type deal. Which, they're not even necessarily in turn it around in a hurry type. They're just really you know what it is? Like, here's the biggest thing for them as like far as UFAs go, because I think
I think David Krejci is probably going to walk. Like that's probably I think they are going to move on from David Krejci. He's 35. He was making $7.25 million. Like he served them well. Unless he's coming back on a very, 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 very discounted contract, I don't see that being a big return for them. I think the biggest thing for them, or the biggest measuring stick of how management sees themselves is what do they do with Taylor Hall? If they give him his big, if they let him walk or say sign him to a very low friendly, another team friendly, low term 1 year, maybe 2 contract for them, that would be a sign of maybe they know they're kind of need to kind of make some change. Like they need to be
what they do with Taylor Hall will basically
around.
What they do with him will basically tell the league and followers of the league what the Bruins' plans are going to be. Because I mean, if they let him walk, they didn't give up much, anything.
They didn't. They gave him a second rounder to get him. Yeah. But if they give him his big monster extension that he has been looking for, that's a bit of a red flag. That would be a red flag for me because I'd be like, they still think they are very, very I mean, I don't think it'll be that bad because I think Taylor Hall is a lot. I think Taylor Hall is definitely, because of some of the teams he's played on, has been turned into this guy of you can't get it done in the playoff, blah 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 blah. And has been they have really undervalued what he's capable of. Mm-hmm. But at the same, I don't think he would turn into a Louis Eriksson contract, but it would be a sign of them saying, they still think they're a lot better than they are, and they think they're in a lot better spot than they are right now. Yeah. That, it's more what the contract would represent for them rather than the guy behind it. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, I've seen Bruins fans, they're the ones, I think this is fair of all New England sports fans, but, Bruins fans, especially because that's what I see. They're the ones who are really hitting the panic button, being time to fire everybody. It's time to fire absolutely everybody. Trade everyone. They're terrible. They ruined the courts. Didn't they go to 4 cup finals in the last 3-4 cup finals in the last so many years? Come on, don't go crazy here. Let's not get nuts about time to trade everybody. Okay.
Although it'd be. Okay, before this will be the last. Well, we'll leave this on this note on the playoff series and the Boston Bruins. Jim Benning, being aggressive this offseason, decides it's a good idea to trade a bunch of pieces, picks, prospects, so he can get Brad Marchand from the Boston Bruins for the Vancouver Canucks. Think about it. He's a good player, but holy shit, the market would implode. It would be the signs of the dark times or something.
I honestly have no clue what would happen. I don't think he'd come here. I think he would not want to.
He would waive he'd be like, no.
No, you know what? He is a bit of an agent of chaos. I think, personality wise, I think he would come here for the memes if he wanted.
Yeah,
if he wanted.
You know what he would do, too? In his first press conference, he'd be like, I've had a lot of good memories in Vancouver.
Oh, of course he would. Of course he would. You know what? Honestly, here's the thing. I can pretend we can pretend as a fan base all we want and as a media people all we want that, the fans would hate him, right? Would just hate him and boo him immediately. They'd love him. No, they'd go nuts. No, come on. No, absolutely. Canucks people. The minute Brad Marchand put on a Canucks jersey, if that happened, people would just be like, this is the guy, let's go. He would love him.
Just think of the way people revere Max Lapierre in Burroughs, right? He would have been in that echelon of guys that you love to see get under people's skin. People loved Raffi Torres when he was here, and all he would do was try to injure people and score goals.
Antoine Roussel, same thing.
People love the
Niels Höglander a little bit. Niels Höglander to a bit of an extent. Yeah. Maybe not as dirty as Brad Marchand, but still definitely gets under people's skin on the ice. He's very good at that. As Tanner Pearson put it, Waterbug, calling him the Waterbug out there.
I hate that nickname, by the way.
It's used a lot. It's a very common hockey.
I don't like it.
It's not a nickname so much as it's just a description of a style of play. Like that,
Sure.
they're all. You can go
I don't
back
like
like in the like chronicles of history and see a lot of different players who get called a water bug for their style of play. Apparently, that's just a thing. That's not necessarily a Hoaglander specific thing.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Why don't we? Let's get into the NHL award finalists. We'll
wrap this up and say like
we'll make our picks.
Awards.
We'll just like
the conference
say who
finals
we
start.
think's gonna
I think on Sunday.
Oh yeah.
First of all, brackets decimated. You know what is really funny though? So you have Tampa. You have Tampa on yours. You've got one shot. I think you got the one lottery ticket still left. Woo. What's funny is I think in our CreaseCast bracket league, I actually submitted my like chaos bracket instead of like my analysis bracket, which means I still have the Canadians in there. I think they're the one team I have left in that, which is. Hey, hell yes. Unreal. Saving my ass right now. But it won't be for long. I think I picked them. I think I picked them to win. I think I picked them to win the cup in that bracket. I'm not sure. I'd have to double check.
They could go 16-0 here before facing a real challenge.
No, don't jinx the Habs. Don't do that. They need it. They need the help. They're very much in the case of, oh my god, we're gonna get another one of those weird sweep paths where first, the Jets swept the Oilers, then the Habs swept the Jets. Now the Knights might sweep the Habs, which happened a couple years ago. And up until the Bruins. Yeah, up until the Bruins, I think that happened.
Those are always the funniest brackets when that happens. When those shake.
Oh yeah, those are wild. So I guess let's start with
we'll go with
Prince
the
of Wales.
Sorry, you want to do
finals.
Yeah, okay. The finals.
The predictions here. So Tampa Islanders.
Tampa. I think Tampa's gonna win in probably 7.
So, okay, you think the Islanders drag it out that long?
I think the Islanders will play good enough to push it to 7.
Okay. I don't know how much they've changed. I don't know how much better necessarily they've gotten from last year. I guess save for another year of Barzell improving per se. I guess I would have to say, I'd say another. I would also say Tampa in 6. I think the Lightning are still clearly the better team in that case, and but I do think the Islanders will give them a run here. Gross, damn it.
Vegas Habs.
Vegas Habs, which the battle of not Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, the battle of Max Pacioretty. There's actually some weird storylines in there that I quite love.
There, but yeah,
this
seems like it's just Vegas's to win. Or sorry, this is Vegas's to lose because if they lose to the Habs, oh man, that's an ugly look. I think Vegas is probably going to win in 5. Hart says, "Give me Cole Caulfield in a cup final in his first year." That would rule. That would amazing. Rule. And you know what? For the Tyler Toffoli,
I want Tyler.
Talk, that would be
I really want
incredible. That. So Hart hopes for the Habs, but I have a feeling Vegas, now that they've overcome the Avalanche, they might be like, let's roll and just roll through the Habs. But we'll see.
Yeah, I imagine so because they look shaky coming out of the Minnesota series, but now they look like they're just
they got a bit of confidence back.
They're rolling. I'm going to say, I'm going to say yes. Also, obviously, I'm going to say Knights in 5 as well. And especially just because of the fact that look, the Habs, they have some fans in the building. I think the fact that they're coming into this series having only played out in front of maybe say 2,500 people at most, compared to Vegas, which has a full house already. That does matter in this case. Sometimes we make too big a deal about home ice advantage and what the crowd can and the crowd energy. I do think the Habs are coming in at a significant disadvantage, having not played in front of a full building and as long as they have, and now having to play in front of the Vegas crowd, which is notoriously one of the better crowds,
notoriously
one of the loudest,
shitty.
One of the they're
saw
not
the video of them stealing the guy's flag. And
I'm not gonna paint, I'm not gonna paint the entire fan base with that broad of strokes because that's unfair. I mean, hey, people still give us riot jokes, as if we were all there for that. Even though, and also as if they think that actually phases us at this point. like, so I'm not going to paint them with broad strokes, but they're apparently, that building is one of the loudest buildings in the NHL. So you're going to have a hard time coming into that, having not played in front of a loud building, like a really loud building in as long as the Habs have. Like, close to almost 2 years, like almost 2 years at this point. You're getting there. You're getting pretty close to it, at least. Yeah. So yeah, they're coming in at a bit of a disadvantage, but yeah, they could potentially, if there's anyone who could goalie the Canadian or the Knights, it's Carey Price. Like, that's totally capable.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
Well, that will segue us perfectly into we're going to speed round our picks for the NHL Awards finalists. And
which we
the first
did not
topic,
vote on because, of course, we didn't.
We did not, because we do not count as media and we don't get a say. But the first actual one on the list is the Vezina Trophy. And I think this one's pretty easy, for me at least. I'm picking Marc-Andre Fleury. I don't know about you, though.
Okay. I realized I didn't ever actually finish my thought on what my thought process is with Tampa. Whereas that, because again, ADHD brain. Where, I used to really when Vasilevsky got nominated for the Vezina a couple of years back, and I think last year he did as well. I think he's been nominated multiple times in a row now. I'm always like, well, okay. As much as I'm very much I always like to give my goalies credit. I was always like, okay, Vasilevsky getting nominated, that's great. He definitely does well, but how much of that is just him playing in front of a really good defense, et cetera, right?
And
playing in front of one of the best teams in the NHL. Yeah, and then I watched this game, this series, these playoffs in particular, where, I mentioned to you, right? I feel like there's a lot of games where they're the second best team on the ice, or and
it's kind of like the Vegas thing, where it's like Vegas makes games harder than they need to be, but Tampa makes games harder than they need to be, but in an exciting way, or in an exciting way.
And they also kind of know they don't have to because of how good Vasilevsky is back there. It's completely fit my thinking on Tampa in the sense of, okay, the Lightning are still good, but they're not as necessarily great, as dominant as I thought they were, from a full 60-minute standpoint. And Andrei Vasilevsky, on the other hand, is just God mode, on a nightly basis. Yeah, I think this is probably, I don't think Vasilevsky's gonna win this year. I will say I think it's probably gonna go. I think also Fleury, weirdly not been nominated for the Vezina, I think, ever before this.
Yeah,
I think this is the first time.
They were saying that, and I was
nuts.
like, really?
Yeah,
that seems
which
weird
is just
to me.
nuts. I also think it's Fleury, but any of these goaltenders I could see this being one of the closest votes out there. This is probably the closest vote as far as the awards are concerned. I think this will be Fleury, and I think he's going to win it just by a hair.
Okay. Calder Trophy. I think this one's no Hoglander.
But the others are
no Jonah Gadjevich.
Kirill Kaprizov.
Oh yeah, this one isn't even really a debate. It's.
I mean, Jason Robertson made a really good push, and sometimes recency bias plays into it. So maybe he made enough noise in the later stages to get there, but Kaprizov completely changed the way the Wild play hockey. He completely changed the way that a lot of people look at the Wild in terms of how they play. And we talked about, we talk about boring teams. The Wild have been boring for 20 years. Suddenly they're much more exciting as soon as Kirill Kaprizov comes in. I think this is him. Nedeljkovic, good to see him getting on the vote. He earned it. Robertson as well. I did not see enough of Jason Robertson to really give my 2 cents on him, but apparently he did very well. Apparently he did very well in Dallas.
He had good scoring rates, good assist rates, just by all accounts, was one of the Stars' better players. So good for him. Yeah. I hate this trophy.
The Lady Byng?
The Lady Byng, it's so stupid. The most gentlemanly player, and the first person is Austin Matthews. I feel like I've talked about this, maybe not on this podcast, but somewhere else. I'm like, you cannot have a most gentlemanly player and ask people to ignore off ice shit.
Yeah, no.
Matthews being nominated is a joke. I don't care if he avoids penalties and whatever.
Yeah.
He should never be nominated, frankly.
Matthews look, I understand in the like I understand from like other trophies, yeah, I understand why say off ice doesn't necessarily need to factor in to what they do on the ice for like say best defenseman, best defensive forward, rookie, what have you. Yeah. But for most gentlemanly player, like that very specific wording of and what constitutes someone being a gentlemanly player in a good sport, but like a sportsman player, like it basically this trophy is the who sets the best example. It really is it's a trophy of who sets the best example on the ice, and I think that has to go for off the ice as well. Yeah. And so I think what happened with Matthews a couple years ago, at least for the time being, until he shows like the receipts of actually learning from like that
doing something like productive and like useful to society, other than just being like a meathead,
other than just being a good hockey player. I don't think you can really regardless of how few penalties he takes. I don't think he should be up for this kind of award. Jakob Slavin, I think would be
he would be my pick.
He would be my pick as well. Jakob Slavin. I saw a weird take on why he shouldn't win either based on off-ice stuff that I'm not going to repeat because I don't think it's fair in that case. But Slavin is a very underrated defenseman. Does a lot for that Carolina Hurricanes team and does not take a lot of penalties and has proven in these playoffs it is hard not to sometimes. Like it is very hard to get away with few penalties. And I think his one penalty this year was like puck over glass or something. Like I think
the worst one.
Yeah, literally the one that you can just get that everyone gets called on automatically. The one penalty that gets called by the rule book, whether it should be or not. Jared Spurgeon getting credit as well. But I think Slavin's gonna win. I think this is Slavin's. Yeah.
The Selke. My pick, Mark Stone, and this might be recency bias because of like just how unreal he's been in the playoffs, but I feel like he's been an incredible two-way forward basically since he left. Even when he was with Ottawa, he was a great two-way forward, and it's just only gotten better since on a better team in Vegas. So like Bergeron, he'll probably win because like
Bergeron's a legacy vote. I don't.
He always gets these votes, and like everyone like loves him, and is always like whenever he's brought up on broadcast, it's like, oh, Patrice Bergeron's two-way play, whatever. For me, it should be Mark Stone. It's kind of like it's like you gotta reward the guy while he's actually in it. You can't be like 5 years from now when like his two-way plays dipped, and you're like, oh, we probably should have given it to him a couple of years ago, so let's give it to him now. Like I hate those votes. Like that happens all the time with the Norris, which we'll get into.
Yeah, we'll get into that
right
next.
after.
Yeah. I'm gonna go. I think this is the one where we're gonna differentiate here. I'm gonna go with Barkov. I'm gonna go with Alexander Barkov to win. I think like as much as Mark Stone clearly is important to the Knights' success and his ability to play at both ends is important to the Knights. I think what Barkov does for the Panthers on a nightly basis is like clearly like it's so valuable, so much more valuable to what the Panthers' success than what Stone does to the Knights. Not because again, that's not to take away from Stone. That's literally just because of the fact that the Panthers are clearly not as deep. They don't have as much talent. They really punched above their weight class this year, and a lot of that was due to Barkov. And Barkov is another one of the I know every year we have the whole is Barkov the most underrated player in the NHL kind of deal. He has not won an award, I don't think. I don't think he's won an individual award yet. Or at least not outside of like say like the Calder. Or so I do think that this is Barkov's turn. I think the Panthers got into the playoffs largely due to what he brought, and he took his game to a whole other level this year than he has in years past. I want to see Barkov win because he's not won before, and I do believe Stone has won once, and Barkov does like the way that he played and what he brought to the Panthers to get them back into the postseason and have the year that they had is largely due to his play.
Okay, the Norris. These are some very interesting picks because you never see the Norris reward young defensemen practically ever. So this Adam Fox, Victor Hedman, Cale Makar. For the sake of like interesting, it would be so cool if Cale Makar won the year after winning a Calder. Like that's like that's some storyline shit right there. And then
True.
I think he needs his new contract. He's going to be like, look what I won in 2 seasons.
Yeah.
And the Avs are probably going to have to pony up quite a bit, possibly more than what they're going to have to put, what the Canucks are going to have to pony up for Pedersen.
And then they're going to have to do the same for Bowen Byram right after. Whoops.
But
yeah.
My pick would probably go for Adam Fox, just because I've seen like some of the charts on his like defensive numbers and like his offense, and I'm like, holy shit, like the guy's unbelievable.
Yeah.
They'll probably give it to Hedman just because, you know, he's big and Swedish.
This is the key. This is one of those very key. The Norris is one of those trophies that you can tell sometimes when people do not do not fill out their ballots and have not really done the research into it. I mean, Matthews is another one. Like, Matthews is another case of that. In the Lady Byng conversation, that's another case of somebody not really only looking at, oh, what does the penalty say, and then voting based on that. The Norris is another case of where they're like, well, Victor Hedman scores a lot, so scores a lot, and he's the number 1 defenseman in Tampa, who's one of the best teams. So yeah, let's vote him, right? Yeah. Apparently, his numbers have actually not been that good this year. This has actually been an underwhelming year for Victor Hedman compared to years past, where he might have been more warranting of the Norris. I am also voting for Adam Fox in my case because, I think he's a guy that's younger. And again, like, talk about this year being like such a detriment in terms of like paying attention to what other teams do, like because the divisions were only divisional play and not paying attention to what the rest of the league does as much this year. Especially here in Canada. I wish I'd gotten to see Adam Fox play a little bit more because apparently he was just incredible with the Rangers, and like he did a lot. He put them a lot closer to a playoff spot than they maybe should have been based on his play. So I'm going with Adam Fox. I hope they reward the younger player, and in the same reason that if Cale Makar won, I wouldn't be disappointed either. Like that wouldn't be a bad call either.
Either was fine. I just don't think Hedman should get it.
Yeah,
that's
nothing against Hedman. It's just as much as it's simply that fact that he was clearly the third best defenseman out of these 3. Yeah, and it's a legacy pick, and you don't want that, and that shouldn't be the way awards get voted on.
Yeah. The next one's the Jack Adams, and I have a feeling we're
AKA
both going to
your goalie really played and put you above a better played you into a play better than you expected, huh? Like that sort of thing.
So. Brind'Amour, Dean Evason, or Joel Quenneville. I have to say I think Joe Q gets it. Because I think what he got out of his roster this year and the decisions he made in, I mean, obviously they tell you to not count playoffs, but like some of the goaltending decisions he made, like the decision to ride Chris Drieger down the stretch, like there's a lot of things that like an old coach wouldn't usually do, especially one who like, you know, basically led a dynasty for like a decade and then got fired because he was not changing it up enough. The fact that he was changing it up a lot and it led to the kinds of like success that Florida had and got them to the playoffs. And although playoffs didn't really go their way, I think he got a lot out of a roster that like was using a lot of very niche picks and prospects that otherwise wouldn't have this kind of success that they usually would if they weren't under him or his systems that they were being used. Yep. And they provided one of the most entertaining series of the playoffs because of it. So for me, I picked Joe Q, but like, honestly, you could make a case for Dean Evason. You could make a case for Rod Brind'Amour. I would not care if either 3 won. That's just, I'm going with Joe Q because like, I mean, I think he's won the Jack Adams before. So it wouldn't be like surprising if he, you know, won another one for his brand new team. So whatever.
This is an award for sure where I don't see one of these picks where I'd be like, oh, someone was robbed here. I think all these coaches are very capable. Dean Evason, I will say, like with him particularly though, like just a little, not an asterisk so much as the Wild are the one team out of those 3 that I look at that where it's like, okay, this could be flash in the pan. Like this could have been there, which happens a lot with Jack Adams Award winners where
Yeah.
Like, again, because it's often the coaches that win Jack Adams trophies are how it's weird how it's interesting how so many times that correlates with one of their goalies going on a wild good run and then falling back to earth the next year.
Yeah.
Like,
a lot of Jack Adams like nominees, like there's always the one guy where it's like it's because his team had unprecedented success previously in the last couple of years, and then suddenly they had it, and it's like, how much of this could you attribute to Cam Talbot and a rookie Capo Kakkonen playing out of their minds, and a rookie that was a complete dynamite offensive prodigy in Kirill Kaprizov coming out of nowhere? So it's tough to say. There could be a falling to earth where it's like they're just the old boring Minnesota.
The Wild are, the Wild are very much one of those teams where it's like they're one of those teams where I'm like, okay, this team could miss the playoffs next year, and I wouldn't be surprised as much. I wouldn't be surprised just as in the same way that I wouldn't be surprised if they made it, kind of thing. Like they're very much in that. Yeah. It could differ. It could wobble. But that in mind, I think I gotta go with Brind'Amour. I think I gotta go with Brind'Amour on this one. I think the way that the Hurricanes took another step for the Hurricanes this year. They have routinely improved. Again, a little bit of a case of, hey, maybe flash in the pan goaltending had something to do with it. Possibly. I hope not.
I think there's more about the 5v5 play. Like they were really
they were just so good. They're such a good team. They're such a well-rounded group, and they've really bought into the system Brind'Amour has put together. Who, by the way, does not have a contract yet still. That contract has not been signed, so that could change. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens if, say, he wins that trophy, how much the price tag goes up. But, I'm going to go with Brind'Amour.
Okay. And the last one, probably the most contentious, but honestly, like, there's no question. It's the Connor McDavid Trophy, the Hart Memorial Trophy. I don't know how you could possibly give it to anyone else than him. The guy had 60 or 40 more points than Nathan McKinnon. He's the only reason his team was in the playoffs. Yeah, they got swept. But that's gonna happen when there is no depth whatsoever on your team. Yeah, it's like regular season. That guy is unfucking believable at getting his team to the playoffs. They just need to surround him with a team that can actually do something with it. Nathan McKinnon's great. He's got great two-way value. Austin Matthews can score goals like no other, and he had, by some metrics, an improved defensive game. So,
and he scored a lot. Like he scored 40 goals. That was incredible.
Yes. In a shortened year, 40 goals is really fucking impressive.
Yep.
But you just can't honestly look at Connor McDavid and what he's doing to the Oilers and be like, nah, he's not the MVP.
Literally, he scored 100 damn points in less than 56 games.
Yeah,
I think it was just straight up disgusting. And people were trying to discount that as, but he played and I understand if maybe the playoffs haven't necessarily changed your mind on this in terms of the North Division being terrible. But I don't think there's any doubt in my mind, I don't know about you, that he wouldn't have scored 100 points anyway. Had they been playing normal teams for 56 games, I would not have been stunned if he had done it that quickly, even if they were in the normal Pacific Division. Maybe you don't have to play Ottawa, maybe you don't play Ottawa anymore, but you just swap it for Anaheim, who was arguably worse, and LA, who's in transition, and the Sharks, who are not good anymore. You just swap it out, and then there are all the other teams that in the league that you would have gotten a shot at who you didn't this year. He would have still done it. This is McDavid's to win 100%. And that's not to discount what McKinnon. This is just very clearly McDavid is in a league of his own. Is so clearly just light years ahead of everyone else. He's the greatest player in the world by far. Yeah.
Well, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode. As always, make sure to subscribe to all of our podcast services. That includes our YouTube channel. And if you like what we're what we're spitting, what we're putting down, maybe check out our Patreon. We got $1 tiers, we got $5 tiers, we've got exclusive content, exclusive episodes where we go a bit more off the cuff. This was a really fun episode where we got to talk about a bit of everything, bit of Canucks, bit of the world, bit of everything. And started off with me telling a very stupid story about stepping in moldy, shitty watermelon. So, that's the capper right there.
We were all here for it.
That was also there. We were all here for it. But Lachlan, where can the fine folks find you?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok at Lach and the Crease. You can find me as well on my website at lachandthecrease.com, where I post articles sometimes and other things. And you can also check out our website, CreaseCast.ca, if you want to see some of the episodes and some of the other stuff we do. Cody, where can they find you?
The fine folks can find me at Cody Severson on Twitter and my website, commetsharvest.com. Thanks again for tuning into this episode, guys, and we will catch you on our next one. Much appreciated, guys. Bye!
Bye!